Good evening and welcome to our Camp Rehoboth Forum, Courageous Conversations, Being Black and Queer in Delaware. My name is Salvatore Seeley. I am Director of Health and Wellness Programs for Camp Rehoboth. On behalf of Camp, the Health and Wellness Programs, and our Thrive Youth Program, and the Southern Delaware Alliance for Racial Justice, I want to welcome you this evening to this important conversation. Before we start, I just wanted to go over one important tech item. We'll have some time at the end of this forum for a couple questions from you. If you have a question, at the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A button. Press that and you'll get a prompt to leave a question. As we continue this important dialogue after tonight, I encourage you to check out the 21-day Racial Equity and Social Justice Challenge powered by the United Way of Delaware and the YWCA of Delaware. This is your chance to build more effective social justice habits, particularly those dealing with issues of race, power, privilege, and leadership, by joining thousands of other Delawareans in a 21-day journey of self-discovery that you can complete online whenever you're comfortable. I'll put the link in the chat box at the end if you want more information. If you'd like to, you can go to www.deracialequalitychallenge.org. You can join as an individual or you can join Camp Rehoboth's team. So let's get started. Thank you again for being here. And I want to introduce you to the most awesome host this evening. Hosting this evening's program is Gail Jackson. Gail and her partner Donna have enjoyed spending time in Rehoboth for over 20 years. They lived here for the past 11. Gail is recently retired after spending 35 years as a mental health and drug and alcohol clinician. Gail is enjoying retirement, unless I pull her out of retirement, while she's looking for ways to have important conversations about race, equality, and justice in order to make positive change. Thank you again for being here. And Gail, thank you very much for hosting tonight.
Thank you, Sal, for that wonderful introduction. I am very glad to be here tonight for this important conversation on being Black and queer in Delaware. Our hope for tonight is at the end of the evening, we will hear the experiences of our panelists and begin to have dialogue, conversations about race and sexuality within our local community. So before we begin, I'd like to introduce our lovely panelists, and I'm going to start with Lois.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lois Powell, and I'm very happy to be here tonight.
And just a brief bio for all of our panelists. And I say brief because certainly we would have much more to say because they're outstanding folks with long bios. So just briefly, I would say for Ms. Lois Powell is a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner who retired in 2002 from her position as a director of outpatient child and adolescent services at St. Vincent's Hospital in Harrison, New York. And Lois is also a Reiki master teacher. Next up, we have Queen.
Hello, everyone. I am Queen, and I use she, they pronouns.
Queen is a licensed clinical social worker, master's level MED. Queen is a Black queer woman, hippie, sister sexologist with over 17 years of clinical experience. Queen is a full-time private practitioner specializing in sexology and as a transformational life coach. Next up, we have Jason.
Hello, everyone. I am Jason Aaron, and my pronouns are he, him, his.
All right now. Jason Aaron Mathis White and his husband were married in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware in 2014 and moved to Delaware in 2015. Originally from Washington, D.C., they came to the area to pursue ministry. Jason works in real estate, has found community of force, and has come here to enjoy life at Rehoboth Beach. Jason is a property manager by profession and also has his own concierge apparel and wreath company. Next up, we have Jay.
Good evening. I am Jay, also Jason D. My pronouns are he, him, and his.
Jason D is a same gender loving pastor, entrepreneur, real estate agent, and hospitality professional. Jay loves to travel, shop, go out to eat with his husband, Jason, of 5 years. And next up, we have Corinne.
Hello, my name is Corinne, and I will go by any pronouns you choose to use.
All right now. Corinne is an aspiring actress and singer. Corinne is a member of Camp Rehoboth's Thrive Youth Program. Corinne will end our evening by closing our program later on. So thank you to all the panelists for being here, and thank you for helping me make it through this process. So we're going to talk about your own personal experiences. And I said to Sal that I would give a disclaimer saying that you all will speak from your own experiences. I mean, certainly as Black folk, we don't represent the whole Black race. So these are your experiences, and those are the things that we're going to talk about tonight. So how's everybody feeling? If we had a one-word definition of how you're feeling tonight, because I can tell you how I'm feeling. I'm feeling a little nervous, but it's going to be okay. Any words jumping
I'm excited.
out? Excited, all right.
Energized.
Energized, I love it.
I like that one, Jay. Like, yeah, I would say the same thing, energized.
Okay, all right.
Ready. Yeah.
I'll ditto, energized and excited.
Okay. Corinne, any words you want to throw out there to the group?
Oh, I get excited too, but a little bit anxious, but mostly excited.
Okay. Well, we're all a crew and a team, so we're going to be fine.
Yes.
All right. So let's get this thing started. So I want to start off by giving a definition of the word intersectionality. This is a concept, a theory that was started some years ago by a professor and lawyer in California named Kimberly Williams Crenshaw. The definition for intersectionality is the interconnected nature of social categories such as race, class, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group, therefore creating overlapping systems of discrimination or disadvantage. So that is a clinical definition. If I break it down from the words of Audre Lorde, who identified herself as a Black lesbian mother and feminist, she said, there is no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives. So we're going to start with the conversation about intersectionality and how you define yourself. And I think the question to the panel and whoever wants to start it off and jump in there would be, how do you describe your intersectional identity? So when we talk about intersectionality, and you think of all the different pieces that come with that as a Black queer person, how do you identify your intersectionality? Who wants to kick that off? Oh boy, you guys are quiet. I'm gonna call on Miss Queen.
Wow. No, so how do I describe it? First, with those things, right? Black with a capital B, as in culture, right? Queer, as in like fluid in my sexuality and in my gender. So I would start with those first, right? I think the quote that you used from Audre Lorde is precisely what I embody, is that, you know, I honor all of who I am. And from this lens of being Black and queer, it informs how I see the world.
Okay. Anybody else want to jump in on that conversation, on that question?
So my quick answer. Oh, go ahead, Mama Lois.
No, I yield to you.
My quick answer would be I am Black, same gender loving male, but that's still limited in all of who I am. So we'll start with that, and I'll come back with my lengthy answer.
Okay, so because I'm gonna hold on to that because I'm gonna come back because I have a question for that. So Lois, did you want to?
I identify as Black, lesbian, mother, spiritual being.
Okay. Now, Jay, when you say that again, what you said was how you identify with the intersectionality.
Black, same gender loving male.
Okay. So you said that that's just a piece. So then it's a bigger dynamic than that. And which comes first? Does something come first before the other?
No.
Okay. All right. All right.
And that's the bigger piece. So we all are a trichotomy. We're body, spirit, and soul. And no one part of that exists outside of the other. If one part is not there, then we're dead. And so for me to say that Black is at the top or same gender loving is at the top or male is at the top diminishes all the other facets. And so there's not one that is more important or that falls on the top or the bottom of the list. Everything about me, all of who makes me me is all number one.
Awesome. And I think, well, Corinne, anybody else want to have any conversation on that? Just that question, like how do you identify, what's your intersectionality? Jason, you're kind of quiet.
Well, so he really kind of knocked it out the park, so that's why I didn't really say anything. But it's pretty much the same for me. So I identify as a Black gay male, but there are all these other parts of me and all these other roles that you fulfill in society and through your daily walk that you kind of have to switch in and out of. And so it does all encompass who you are and it all makes you who you are. And like you said, there isn't one part of you that goes before the other. They are all part of who you are.
So you said a key word, and we kind of talked about this a little bit. I think last night we mentioned it, or I mentioned it. You said the word switch. And so then the big question I would ask the whole panel is, what are the challenges with that intersectionality as being Black and queer and all these other parts? What are the challenges, and what does code switching, how does that come into play? Because you're all these different things as all of us are. What are the extra challenges? Like, do you walk a different walk in some places than other places? And do you feel like you're supposed to walk a different walk?
Well, for me, for me, I do like change up a lot of times. Like I change it for like church because no one there like knows like that, like I'm like that in the LGBTQ community, like they don't know that. Like they know I have some like friends that are, but like not me. And so, and like they might say a slur sometimes about the community, and I'll just sit there like I want to say something, but I can't because I know. And then but then also my friends, like we talk about everything with my friends because like we're all like the weirdos and stuff. So it's like I change up around like my like family, like Black like part of family, because I feel like I have to be like super not I usually just end up being really quiet during that time because I don't want to like act white because like I'm mixed, so I don't want to like act white and like I talk like white, but yeah.
So Corinne, when you say that, that's interesting because that sounds like a fair amount of pressure. So you're regulating yourself. And how comfortable or uncomfortable is that for you? You know, it's like you're all these pieces and all these parts, as we all are. So how do you manage that without feeling overwhelmed as a young person?
Well, the church thing, I'm just used to it because like before I like really like read up on like LGBTQ community, like I was I knew like they were being really mean to these people, but but I didn't really like understand it fully. So like it didn't really bother me, and now it bothers me, but I don't worry as much because I'm used to it. But then like the whole like thing about like not trying to act black, I mean, I said not trying to act white, not act white. It's kind of, that's been really like, because like I'll be like church, but family functions, and like I usually just try not to do stuff because I don't want to seem like I'm acting white, which is weird. Even though I'm not mixed like directly, it's like grandfather type, like great grandfather type thing, but I still end up being light.
So there's a lot going on in your young life, as all of us. So thinking about this whole subject and all the things that are going on in the world and the big current movement of Black Lives Matter, and I came up with this question that today. I was thinking, do you guys think there's a correlation with Black Lives Matter and intersectionality? Is the Black Lives Matter movement an outcry as a part of intersectionality? Like, is it possible that people see things that they're just tired now? They're tired of that walk of intertwining their existence. So they're thirsty for a deliverance, perhaps, and a deliverance through a movement like Black Lives Matter. So
can I want to bring a little bit of what Corinne just said into your question, because I do think that they are in a way connected. I grew up similar to how Corinne is growing up now. Corinne, I'm sorry. You just want to be seen as an individual, just like everyone else. But you feel like when you walk into a professional setting that you have to put on, you have to be extra. You have to be better than everyone else that's in that setting just to be noticed, just to be accepted. It's the same way if I walk into a store or the post office or any general place that I'm walking, I'm concerned about what way do you see me? Do you see my Blackness? Do you see that I'm gay? What do you see when you see me instead of just seeing me as an individual as I see you? So it's very exhausting to move through the day and move through the world trying to, in a way, prove that you're just as good as the person that's that you're interacting with or that you're passing on the street or whatever the case may be. Not to mention driving down the street, did I put my signal on? Did I stop long enough at the stop sign? All of these various things that we feel is that pressure that you're talking about. Those are all the things that we feel. And it's exhausting. So yes, we're tired. And so people are out marching and protesting and speaking up now because they just want you to understand what it is that we feel on a day-to-day, minute-by-minute basis.
Absolutely. I so agree. If I can chime in, like, I think what Corinne's giving her lived experience really talks about like the policing of our behavior and how synonymous that being acceptable is somehow synonymous with like white culture or white supremacy, that we have to police ourselves in such a way that we appear less threatening, right? So there's all these microaggressions and micro insults that we have been navigating for centuries. And additionally, what you see is the Black Lives Matter movement being about this generation being tired, but every generation since we have come on these shores as victims of like human and sex trafficking in the American slave trades, like we've been here trying to prove our worth. And it just always amazes me the lack of empathy that we have as a people and the amount of policing that is necessary in order for us to be less likely to be policed by other people, because we are consistently and always policed.
Thank you, Queen. Thank you guys for all those great comments. Lois, were you going to?
Yeah, and I can certainly agree with that. And I was thinking as last night after we spoke, and I was thinking as we are speaking today about being tired and my whole journey through my life. And it didn't start with me being a lesbian. I didn't know anything about what lesbians were in the beginning. You know, I did the traditional thing. I got married, I had my kids, yada, yada, yada. But I was saying that I am so exhausted and I am so tired because I feel like today in 2020, we're in a whole nother century, but I feel like I'm backpedaling, and I'm back in the 60s. That's what it feels like for me today. And as I was thinking last night, was it 2 years ago? Maybe last year, we drove to Florida, a friend and my partner and I. And during the week where we stayed, we decided to go, it was like a flea market. And we went in, and I realized I had forgotten my jewelry, all my earrings and necklaces, girly girl me. And I said, well, let's go in here. I want to get some earrings. So we go in the store, and about maybe 10 minutes later, my partner says, I'm going outside. And I said, okay. So I'm walking around, and I have one pair of earrings in my hand. I'm walking around, totally oblivious of my surroundings, except I'm looking for earrings. So I finally get the third pair, and I walk up to the counter. And as I got to the counter, I saw a young woman standing, and she was staring at me, and I filed it, and I proceeded to pay. And then I go outside, and my partner says, I went outside because the two women who were in there, one of them said, you take that one, I'll take the other one. Wow. And I was pissed. I said, and you left me in there? Right? You left me in there by myself. I was so infuriated. Oh, yeah. And to make matters worse, there was a white woman who had come out of the store with 2 shirts on a hanger, and she gets to her husband. My partner says, she says to the man, oh my God, I forgot, I walked out here with these shirts. I didn't even pay for them. Let me go back inside. She went back inside. They didn't see that. Right. And it happens all the time, no matter where I am. If I take my time looking at things, somebody is on my back. So I have that piece that I have to deal with. I have to deal with the fact that we have to say and have signs that say Black Lives Matter. My God, they haven't gotten it yet. We are still a threat. We are still unkempt. We are still uneducated. We are still in their eyes. We are still whatever they think we are, no matter how hard we try. I remember my mother saying, don't say ain't. And in her, she didn't have an accent, my grandmother's accent, you have to speak the Queen's English. You have to speak the Queen's English. And what did that mean? We had to speak white. So it went on and on through my youth, through my young adulthood, through my adulthood, through nursing school. I was the first Black nurse on days at St. Vincent's Hospital. First, 1975. So yeah, I'm exhausted. I am exhausted. I am tired. And as I said, thank God I have hope, because if I didn't, I'd take a pill and I'd go to sleep forever.
So Lois, thank you for sharing that. Thank you all for all the things we're saying so far. And what's interesting, when I listen to you guys, and I can't speak for anybody out there who's watching this, but I can imagine that people will say, oh, a lot of people might feel, and I might be wrong, but they might feel like, oh, they're complaining, or, you know, they're always angry or whatever. But I think what people need to understand, and the part of this whole dialogue, is just to express real pure feelings. And then at the end, to hopefully just talk about what would be helpful to a group of people in your small ways of things you can individually do to start to make the difference, so that people don't continue to have this journey. Like, hopefully there's a hope for Corinne, because I have to be honest for myself at this stage for me, I don't think that I'll see that clarity in the human experience that I would like to see.
And how, I'm sorry.
And so I'm grateful to hear all of these personal experiences, because they're very real, whether people can understand them or not. And I guess the journey is, no one will ever fully understand that, but we just want people to just hear a little bit, and be open. And that's the process. Queen, I'm sorry.
No, I think, you know, for me, it's jarring, right? To have Mother Lois here, to have you here, to talk about the generation, to talk about, you know, Corinne and the realness of race-based trauma, right? So if people don't, you know, I saw this meme yesterday that was like, you can't argue with lived experience. And for people who do argue with lived experience, do you argue against what, like, do you need research? Because there is research that says the impact of race-based trauma is generational, that higher level of cortisol, that fight, flight, and freeze risk that people of color, that Black people particularly suffer, is why Black women have higher risk of cancer, breast cancer, why there has been a 5-time increase of depression among, you know, Black men. And then you add all these layers to it, and it's impactful. It's a somatic, body-based experience, like that what we're talking about. The fact that we still have to talk about our humanity in a way to convince people. Personally, I'm not at the point of here to convince, right? I'm here to talk about community, and our community, and the Black and queer community particularly. It's something that's without words. The only thing I can do is feel it right now. Like, the only thing you can do is feel it. And I hope, you know, the only thing is a hope that people will put themselves in a position to feel it, because without that, this work isn't ours to begin with, because we've been doing it since day one. For change to happen, we need people to feel it.
So
go ahead. In the beginning, and I can take that same word for energized into the context of the Black Lives Matter movement, is because we get to see all the dynamics. So if you look at why they started the Black Lives Matter movement and all of who that encompasses, it's not just Black straight people, it's Black and gay, Black and trans, it's all parts of our community. And when they're out there marching and chanting and organizing, you don't see the separation. It's not, oh, it's the Blacks, or oh, it's the gays. It's all together. And going back to the great word exhausted, is because it allows us a space and a community where we can be all of us, all of who we are, and it's okay. We don't have to code switch. Right. Me, my Black gay self, gonna come with your Black straight self, your white gay self, whatever. We're all out there as a community, marching, chanting, fighting for the same thing. So that's why I'm energized, and that's why I'm in support of the Black Lives Matter movement, because all parts of my life seem to matter in that community.
So now, Jay, and I mentioned it earlier, so do we want to just give a little understanding of what we mean by code switching? And I guess the ultimate goal is to get to the point where you don't have to do so much code switching, because code switching is exhausting. Yes. Everybody has mentioned a bit of what it is, but does anybody want to take that on to just give a quick little understanding of what code switching means?
So it's basically you having to pick and choose which part of you shows up in which part of your life. And so I can say I code switch a lot less than I used to, and it happened when I got married. When I got married, I said to him, I don't ever want to not acknowledge you in any space. Mm-hmm. And so the people who at church who didn't know that I was gay, they found out. At work, they found out. And so if we are not welcome as who we are and who you are in my life, so every job knows, every church knows, every facet of my life knows, and so I code switch a lot less. And so, but that's basically what it is, having to show up as a different part of you, so you can feel safe. And so, not so you can necessarily feel comfortable, but so that those around you can feel comfortable.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that, you know, sometimes you have a different language, right? We have a different language. Like for me personally, when I'm with family members, I have a different language than when I might be with some of my peers, particularly my peers who happen to be white folks. You know, and so it's interesting having the conversation about it, because for people out there listening, I would think they're thinking, really? Really? I didn't know that. But that's the reality. That's our reality. And when Lois talked about those experiences when she was out shopping, for all the people that you interact with locally, there probably are people who would be surprised about those experiences, because they see you, they see me, they see us locally, and they might think things are going real smooth and that we are quietly passive or whatever, that we don't have that same passion that anybody else would have that are in those active movements per se. You know, we go through the same things. We just have learned how to code switch, perhaps to the point that you don't know all those journeys that we're experiencing, if that makes sense.
And the challenging part is you never know who's seeing which part. So if I go into a store, like he said earlier, are you seeing my blackness? Are you seeing my gayness? That's not about me code switching. I don't know which part you're recognizing and acknowledging, and I don't know which part is offensive to you or making you uncomfortable. And so that's the other challenge when you talk about code switching. You can show up as all of you, but how are people receiving you or acknowledging you?
You know, prime example of that, I don't know if you remember, one particular Sunday we had just left church, went to the grocery store. We both still had our collars on. And what did everybody see? That we were preachers. You know what I mean? It wasn't about our color. It wasn't about anything else. The man was calling me a priest. I could tell he was Catholic. But, you know, so it's just like, that's a prime example. We didn't have the collar on when we walked in that store. What did you see? You know? So for those people that may not quite get what it is we're trying to say, it's what you perceive when you're looking at somebody. Another example I have, for instance, and this speaks more to the need to code switch or feeling like you need to code switch, just out of being a good human. I'm holding the door open for a lady coming out of the post office. She walked right through. And I kind of looked at her and I said, well, you're welcome. And she looked at me like, well, you should have held the door for me. You know what I mean? But I'm like, but the other part of me is, if I had not done that, then she would have had a whole different reaction. Like, this black, boy didn't open it, So it's tiring, because you're like, do I be a good human? Do I just fall in line with your misconceptions? What do I do? What do I do today?
And it's interesting that you say, I'm sorry, Gail.
Go ahead, Lois.
I was just thinking about my friend, one of the social workers that I worked with had a son who was a lawyer. He's actually written a book and about his life. And he was waiting for a client in a New York restaurant. So he's standing there in the doorway, and this white woman walks in and takes off her coat and throws it in his arms to check her coat. He has a tie on, a shirt on, a suit, and she just assumed, because he was black and he was standing by the door, that he was going to be the coat check person.
All the time.
So we could go on and on with all kinds of things. And so I have a question, and then we don't want to run out of time, so I want to get to some local thoughts and feelings. But just one last thing on this whole intersectionality and code switching and so forth. What do you guys feel about, because Jay, you said a couple of times that, I think you said, making other folks feel comfortable. Is that your responsibility? I mean, is that what we need to do?
No, it's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to show up as my best self all day, every day. But the reality is, it's not my responsibility, but it kind of is our unspoken responsibility. Even if we don't want it, it becomes our responsibility, because we still have to do extra and show up extra just so you're not uncomfortable, so that we don't find ourselves in an unwarranted or an unwanted situation. And so it's a yes and no.
Right.
It's part of that exhaustion.
And that's really, when you think about it, just listening to it, and if people are hearing it, that is overwhelming. that you're living your life, but you're also focused on making sure other people are comfortable with the life you're living and who you are. So that's a whole nother level. Like I say, this, we could talk on and on, but that's, if you think about it and put it in perspective, that is amazing. Like, who's making you feel comfortable?
Right.
Like, you know, is anybody making you feel comfortable as a gay Black man?
Right.
You know, so, all right. Having said all that, anybody else want to add anything on that? Queen, you look like you're in deep thought.
I you know, y'all know I stay in deep thought about things. You know, but no, I'm good. Go ahead, because I don't want to go off, so I'm good.
Well, if you got something, let's have it. You know, it don't have to be long.
Well, I think what Jay and Jason talked about is like how intersectionality shows up, right? Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw talks about it showing up in 3 layers. Social, right? Social, whether it's our schools, our families, our churches; political, whether it's land, like we are on Turtle Island; whether it is our ability to walk into store properties, right? Schools, and messages and medias, right? Like we're constantly in this space and place of challenging what someone else has learned from media messages about our existence. And you get to a space and place where you start to think about like, well, what is this life for? And I don't know, I think about this conversation too, and about who is this conversation for? Because I want to be clear that this is not some voyeuristic type of thing where it's like, go ahead and listen to our pain, but understand our resiliency, right? And understanding like what we will continue to do as a community, and that policing our behavior is about saving our lives.
Yes.
It's about saving our lives. Like, it is always life and death for us. It is me worried about my 5-year-old granddaughter going to school because I know school is going to teach her anti-Blackness. Like, it is the layers and the insidiousness of like racism and white supremacy that is exhausting. So I'm sitting here like taking all this in, and also being very mindful about centering our conversation about our lived experience and our ability to thrive.
And thrive is an awesome word, because and sometimes I think this and I say it and people might take it the wrong way, but I think I've had people say to me, would you ever want to be white? And my answer would be no. I think we're bad. I think we're badass, because the things that, and other people are badass too, but our level of badass to me is different. The things that we've experienced generationally and centuries and on, we're resilient in spite of. We're resilient, and that's a whole nother conversation that I wish the young people would really internalize, that resiliency, because a group of people who have endured so much and just keep it moving, and you don't even know sometimes what that inner feeling or thoughts are. They just walking in their grace and walking in their greatness. And
well,
you know, I look forward to the Corinnes of the world to just embrace that history of greatness and resiliency, in spite of what you see on the media and all those other places that might show a different picture. Because right now, as far as the Black Lives Matter movement, some people might think that all the folks that are in that movement are terrorists, and you know, they're running around looting and doing all this stuff, and they miss the message. And that's unfortunate, because that's not the message of it. So,
right, absolutely.
Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, to say, I recognize your generation and generations before has their resiliency and their strength, because I know I cry when I think about like the Birmingham church bombing, when I think about like when I watch Movie King, about Martin Luther King. Like, I cried when I watched that. I cried when I watched Malcolm X. Like, I sometimes I'll go on Facebook and see something like that's like that happened that I never heard about, and I'll just start like crying for a long time. Just like I'll be like praying like, God, why did that happen? Stuff like that. And it's just, I definitely recognize you guys' your resilience and everything.
So we want to definitely get some questions because I see some things popping up here. I'm not a techie. I don't know what all this stuff is, but something's going on. But so bringing it back locally, or trying to bring it back locally. The question is, what has been your experience in Delaware as a Black queer person? And in Delaware, or specifically in Sussex County, if you're in Sussex County, like what has been your experience?
I'm in Newcastle, so Sussex County, go ahead.
Or Delaware.
Yeah.
Sussex
We'll
County.
take it over here in this corner. Quite honestly, I don't have a word for it other than almost non-existent. I have not felt, and it's just, we talk about this, I should say, we talk about this a lot because, we came from the DC area, we moved here and we just thought, oh, it's going to be this sense of community. And we've been here 5 years and I maybe have a handful of people that I can tell you that we know. I'm not saying that we have relationships with them, but we know them. And so it's kind of sad to be here. I know there's this thing about the vacation season and then the off season, but even in the off season, it's just kind of like, hey, you walk into a place and it's just like crickets almost. You don't feel a sense of community, and that's my personal take on it. I don't know.
So, what has been your experience in Sussex County? Disappointing is the word that comes to my mind for Sussex County. We were always drawn to the beach. We love water. And we were always coming out here before we got married. We got married here in Rehoboth. And we said, this can be our home. Let's go. And we did. We thought we would find community. But it feels like we are inside of the queer community, but outsiders in the community. And it seems very segregated in the queer gay community in Sussex County. If you're not older Caucasian, you don't fit in. Older Caucasian male, you don't fit in. If you're not in the drag scene, then you don't fit in. And so we just feel like we don't fit because we're not those things. We show up to events and it's still very awkward and weird. And I will speak to almost anybody, but it's been a struggle to connect to people. So that's been my experience in the queer community in Sussex County. The race part, for Delaware to be the first state, they're far behind when it comes to progress. I've been told that because I dress nice and because I push, because I've always been like in a supervisory position since I've been here. And so I'm told because I push my employees for better, then I think I'm white or I'm trying to be white because I'm pushing them to want more. And I can't say it's because I'm from the city or the bigger city being from DC area, but that's what I'm told. And so that's weird to me. And I've been told that by Blacks and whites, that you're trying to be white. No, I'm just trying to push people for better. So it's been a very weird experience on both sides. My Blackness and my gayness, it's just been disappointing.
Corinne, let me ask you a question. What is your experience? Because you're in Dover, at Dover High?
Yeah.
What's your experience in school in Sussex County?
I'm in Kent, but
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I never really realized how much there was like racism and stuff like that. There was until orange person got elected, and then I started seeing all the like Trump flags and Confederate flags like around here. And then one of my teachers, she's like really like liberal and really nice and stuff. And she invited me on this group on Facebook, and it's basically like exposed the like racist business owners and stuff in Delaware. And I never realized how many racist people there were in Delaware until they started exposing them. And there were so many people that like I don't know any of them personally, but like so many like people and places that like had like racist people there. And then really in school, like I've never really experienced racism from like white people, but I have kind of not racism, but a little bit of like colorism, I guess, from the Black community because of me being lighter. They and like me talking white. They and then my mom, she's like passing. She can pass, but she's mixed, and she's passing, and like they'll be like, oh, so your mom's white and your dad's black, and they're like, no, she's black. And I'll be like, no, she's black, because I don't know why. Like I feel weird that my mom would be like white, because she's not. She's black. And like to someone who sees her, like they think she's white automatically. But then I'm like, but no, she's black. And I guess that I feel like uncomfortable to being mixed, I guess. And it also makes me sad that I think, because like before, when my mom like told me like, oh, you have part Native American in you, and like part Polish and Irish, and then of course like African, and I was like, oh, that's so cool, they're like part Polish, part Irish, and part Native American. But now I think back to it, I'm like, oh, that was most likely the product of rape, and that's sad when I really think about it. I just like really thought, I was like, wait, that was probably the product of rape, and I was like, oh, dang it. So that's fun and sad.
Okay. Lois, were you going to say something in reference to your experience here in Delaware? Like, you're from New York. You know, so and you've been here a while, as I have.
Yeah. Well, it was very different. I've been here since I'm in my 12th year. August 8th, I was here 12 years. And one of the things and I can only use camp as an example because it's a community center experience. And I said, well, I don't see me here. Where are my people? And during Women's Week, there were a few, but they were from out of town and they came in. During Jazz Fest, they were from out of town mostly. And I couldn't understand it, but the same thing happened when I went to my church. I was looking for a place where I could be spiritually fed, and my neighbors said, well, come with us. I was welcomed with open arms. I can't say that I was treated in any way, shape, or form in a way that I felt self-conscious or that I didn't belong, but I didn't see me. And I said that to the pastor. I said, where are the Black people? I was told that Lewis had a whole Black community of people who owned things, and there was a Black sheriff at one point. And so where are the people? And so it was very disappointing. I have some wonderful community with friends, but several of them are transplants from New York. They moved here. And so I know them, and then I met Gail and Donna. And so my horizons have broadened. But really, in terms of, if you said there were a group of supportive Black people here in Rehoboth, I don't know where they are.
Okay. Queen.
So I'm in Newcastle County. I grew up here, but I'm not from here, right? My dad's retired military. So I always felt like an outsider within, right? Patricia Hill Collins talks about like outsider within and being of a place, but not from a place. So trying to build community, growing up here, it was not, right, first of all, queerness, it was not existent, right? And I grew up in Kent County. So you just weren't, right? So let alone having an internal conversation about it. You know, as an adult and living up here in Newcastle County, community is still non-existent, because overall, again, to show up as Black and queer is to show up at additional cost, right?
Yes.
you know, it's an additional cost to show up as Black and queer, you know. So what I've seen is really people ignore me, you know, no matter how much I can bring to the table, or my accolades or degrees, or just as a simple human being, right? What I've seen is continued marginalization because we don't have time to talk about that right now, or that people are just simply uncomfortable. And I like what Jay said about disappointing. It's been disappointing. So even in building relationships with the white queer community, it's still a lot of microaggressions because people are not mindful of talking to me and then yoing me, right? Or talking to me and coming with some type of way of thinking you're joining, and what you're really doing is being disrespectful. So it's about how do we build community together, right? So going back to like, where does power sit? Because it also means space. In Sussex County, camp is a space where, you know, someone could do something to build the community, but up here, there isn't space, right? And the space is still, do you qualify to be within the space? And I don't have the energy to go to do that. I absolutely don't. If you can't know me as a human being, geez, Lord have mercy. I don't have time, right? Like I don't have the time to educate you about how freaking offensive you are because you are uncomfortable with my Blackness. People, and I think to bring up this point too, Black is not a slur.
Right.
Black is not a slur. So when we have race-based conversations, people tiptoe around Blackness the way they do at home, because at home it's a slur. So I need people to get all like, well, at least dealing with me, get all the way right about being in my space to begin with, because there's joy in my Blackness that I am not going to police. So and because of that, there has been this distance that people create because they're not comfortable in doing the work that they understand that racism also means to deal with anti-Blackness. So there isn't community here. And the community that there is again with by my Black and brown queer folks who I kick it with.
Thank you, Queen. And I like that. What was that comment? Get all the way real?
Yeah, get all the way right.
Get all the way right. And I don't know if people understand that, but that's like bottom line.
Right.
Like no sugarcoating, no bullshit.
Right. Get your shit together and figure that out, because that is not my weight to carry about you worried about you offending me. Offend me, learn from it, and let's move on.
And when you and I would just ask the question, it's a way to offend someone. You're not, when someone is offending you, perhaps it's not like they're coming at you to be offensive. They might be afraid that they're being offensive, but I personally would rather we have the dialogue, because for me that means like you're making the effort.
Yeah.
Like don't be over here in the corner saying one thing, feeling something, but you're not expressing to me what your struggle is with understanding what I'm trying to tell you or what I'm trying to get conveyed to you.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a big part of the conflict. People are afraid to have conversations.
Yep.
You know, or people are quick to say, well, I didn't do it, it wasn't me. And nobody said it was you, but we're talking about historical perspective and the impact that continues in 2020.
Impact versus intention.
Yes.
Like, yep, I had to throw my hands up. It was spiritual. Impact versus intention, because people need that, and that's just it. When you can recognize that. Dr. Brene Brown talks about vulnerability, the power of vulnerability. And I would, if y'all want to know where to start with that, because you have to be vulnerable to show up to have these type of hard conversations. And in her research, she said compassion, connection, and being courageous. Yep. Like that, we can't do that for people. People have to be courageous in order to have these conversations, to be better.
Courageous is awesome. And so Sal has been coming in with stacks of questions. So let's try to get through some of this, because there's a lot of questions here. But let me ask one other question before we go to the other questions. All right. They're kind of the same, but I want to answer this question that someone said. And it says, are any of you on the panel in an interracial relationship? If yes, what has that, I think it says, if yes, what has been the reaction? So I personally can speak to that. Because I guess we should get to the questions, because we're gonna spend some time on these. I have been in an interracial relationship, and it's interesting. I'm not sure if they mean what's been the reaction of white people to it, or I don't know. But what I would say is it's been a journey. My spouse and I have been together for 34 years. I've gotten reaction personally from Black folk, my peers, and we've gotten reaction from family. On her side, who weren't really too down with the whole thing. Not the fact that she was even a lesbian, but that she was with a Black woman. Mm-hmm. So that has been a major journey. I think a lot of times, a lot of our friends who are white folks, I think they don't even see me as a Black person. I think they just see me and they would say that they think that's a good thing. And I think it depends on how you look at it, if it's a good thing. If you look at it in a way that you're minimizing my experience as a Black woman and we can't really be keeping it real, then that's not a good thing. So I would say to the question, it's been a journey. It's been interesting. I sometimes say to her, I use her as my security, because when we are out and about, I get a definite different reaction than what she will get. And it's been a journey for her to experience all those things with me over the 34 years, because she grew up very differently than me. I grew up in inner city Philadelphia. So, you know, it's been a learning process. And so I guess the bottom line I would say is that people have seemed to be nice, and sometimes maybe nice, nasty about it, as my mother would say. When you're nice, nasty, you know, you're being nice, but really inside it's not totally nice. But I think the bigger journey has been her family and their struggles with us. And friends just seem to, we have a lot of friends, a lot of them are white folks, and I don't think they see me otherwise, if that makes any sense. And I have to say, it's been interesting with all the stuff that's been going on. I've been personally, it's been a lot of things going on, and people have shown themselves to me with all the stuff that happened with George Floyd. And that's been a little bit of a hurt piece, because I thought that we were one way and you showed me something else, because they weren't courageous, Queen. They weren't able to be courageous. So I don't even know if I answered the question. All I would say is it's been a journey. We have a good life, but certainly there's outside pieces that make you go, mm. And Black folks, you know, have challenged me as to why I'm with a white woman. You know, you couldn't find a nice Black woman. I've heard that, you know, but now they just keep it moving, because it's been so long. It's like 34 years.
Right. I can definitely understand the part where you're talking about people showing themselves to you to be different, because my sister was dating this guy, and their mom like was really, really nice to us, and their mom, she's because the guy's white, and then I saw one of her posts. She posted a thing about this girl got beat up or something, I can't remember, for saying all lives matter. And then I commented in the post and I was like, hey, this is why we say Black Lives Matter, and this is why all lives matter is like really bad and like is really disrespectful and stuff. And then so then she deleted my comment, and then she messaged me on Facebook. She was like, she messaged me on Facebook and she was like, I'm not gonna argue with a teen about this stuff. So can you please delete your she was like, I deleted your comment because I'm not gonna argue to a teen about this stuff. And she mentioned her daughter, because her daughter's is more liberal, and her daughter I think has argued to her about it. And she was like, yeah, I'm not gonna argue with a teen. So then I was like, wait, can I just know, are you what party are you, just so I can maybe get an idea? Because I was basically, this is my covert way of asking, did you vote for Trump? But yeah, and then I found out, and then she said, oh, I'm independent. And then I was like, hey, can I just send you some resources about like, because she said slavery doesn't exist anymore, and that I sent her some resources. I was like, this, even though slavery doesn't exist anymore, and there's still trafficking and stuff like that. But there's modern day slavery, which is the prison system, which they arrest people for, like, they can arrest people for petty crimes for many years. And then they work free labor. And I sent her the video and stuff, and she was like, well, my husband's a warden at a jail, so I'll have to ask him about that. And I'm just like, probably biased because I know him, and I'm like, eh. But yeah, and then I was sending her more videos and talking to her, and then she was like, yes, and then she was like, yeah, I'm gonna block, and then she blocked me. And I was like, well, I guess my sister dodged a bullet there, because he had broke up with her, and I guess she dodged a bullet there because his mom, interesting woman.
All right, so Sal's sending me messages. So
can I just jump in really quick though?
Okay.
Just really quick. So when we talk about the experience in Delaware, I talked about more of my gay experience, but when we talk about in response to everything that's happening right now, one thing that was so disheartening to me, but is what I've been saying all along, is that racism never went anywhere. It just went into the shadows, and now it's out of the shadows. So when Corinne's talking about confrontations on Facebook, there were two white college girls here in Rehoboth who wanted to organize a Black Lives Matter march. And some of the comments that they received, such as, if they go out there, you should spray them down with the hoses.
Hose them down.
And so we're going back to the 50s and the 60s, and so that's a real current day experience in Sussex County of racism in your face, and not even attempting to hide it.
Okay, so question for everybody, because this is where we get into some meat now. We got a little time here. So how do people make effective change? How do community members carry this forward? You know, how do they become allies?
So I think that Queen actually hit on it when she used the word being courageous and having these conversations, right? One of the things that I was actually thinking about was, so I know a lot of white people. I have white friends, all of those, you know, all that good stuff. Just like they said, we have Black friends. I have white friends. And so, but the problem was for me is that when all of this stuff was going down with George Floyd and the uprising was happening, nobody called and was like, hey, are you okay? Like, you know, how are you feeling through all of this? You know, just there was no real compassion. There was no real caring. It was just kind of like, oh, that's my friend. He all right. You know, we're going to be cool when this is all over with, whatever. But that's not accurate. You know what I mean? That's just like when you were saying with you and your partner and how people are showing themselves. To me, that's a different way of showing yourself. Like your what's going on with you and your culture is really not my issue. And so when people begin to start to, even in that, just showing some care and concern for the people that you are connected to and you say that you love, is one way to start. Because then we can have these conversations, and I might drop a nugget that you can then take to your other community or the other group of people that you're around.
So then being courageous about conversations.
Yes.
Okay. Communication. Courageous communication.
Yes.
Yes.
Jay?
So I have a two-part answer about how do people make effective change. The first one is be honest about your own prejudice. Mm-hmm. Be willing to admit that you have prejudice. Because you can't make real connections if you're not honest about your prejudice and having the dialogue to move past that prejudice. And the second part, and that speaks into, like he said, some people like, I had Black friends, well, that means nothing. Corinne talked about it earlier. Slave owners had real, genuine love for some of their slaves, but at the end of the day, when it came down to it, you're still my property, and I'm gonna still make sure you know the place that you're in. So be honest about your prejudice. You can be nice, but if you're not willing to make real connection, then get to the why. And the second part of that answer about how we make effective change is we're in a season of elections. And so if you are truly interested in building the bridge and saying that you want to see Black Lives Matter, instead of being selfish in who you vote for, because are you voting for your own personal, what's going to make you feel comfortable, or are you voting based on what's going to be better for the community at large? And so that step out of yourself, which is fine, and this is beyond Republican and Democrat, is looking at the issues, looking at who, again, not just you personally and what's going to keep the status quo for your life, but if you want to see real change, then going beyond yourself and whose platform is better for the greater community or the community at large. That's how you make effective change. And if you're really supportive of all lives mattering, like some of them said.
Okay.
For me, I think it's, you gotta the people like that are not people of color, like, gotta recognize we're kind of tired of trying to prove to you that our lives matter. Like, we're tired. Like, we should not have to be proving to you that our lives matter with protests and like getting having to work like 10 times harder and all that kind of stuff. Like, you need to show us, we know our lives matter, but we need you to show us that you understand that our lives actually do matter to you by trying to get policy changes, talking to your officials, protesting with us instead of just letting us get beat up and all kind of stuff. Helping protect us, like actually reading up on like what's happened in the past, like stuff like that. Like, just showing that, you know, like it's not just putting up the little black screen, or not just writing like BLM in your bio. It's actually acting on it, doing, even if, because I know I can't go to really protests and stuff because like immunocompromised and stuff like that. I can't go to protests, but like I sign petitions, I email my legislators, stuff like that. Like, that's what, even if you can't go to a protest, you can sign a petition. You can comfort your Black brothers and sisters. You can help us to help ourselves, because we've been trying to help ourselves for a while and people don't like to listen.
Thank you, Corinne. So, boy, it's a lot of questions. What can Camp Rehoboth do to help people of color feel more welcome and, I guess, involved in the community? I can't read Sal's writing, I'm gonna be honest with you.
Okay, so I don't know that I have the answer to that, but I will give you an example of a way that we felt maybe not so welcome. Just like my husband said, we have gone to events. We have even been photographed. I mean, like, can you take this picture? You know, the photographer has come up on several occasions. And not one time have we made it like into the letters or any of those type of things. So it makes you feel like, okay, so our likeness really wasn't worthy enough to be represented in that publication. So I don't have the answer to make me feel more welcome. I just want to put that example out there of a way that we didn't feel so welcome at camp.
Right. Go ahead, Jay. I'm sorry.
I just want to say, so one of the quick answers is going back to Sussex County, Eastern Sussex County, is the queer community is very Caucasian with a little bit of money. And so if you want to bring in the people of color from the western part or the central part of the county, make your membership a little bit more affordable for those people. We might be able to afford it, but everybody can't afford that. And so that pushes some people away or doesn't even draw them in because they're like, I can't afford that. So that's one quick step.
Yeah, and I think to go off of that, talk amongst each other about why you're not comfortable, because to lower the cost would also mean too that you're not going to gatekeep, right? You're not going to gatekeep certain people because you don't feel that they have a certain type of privilege. And it always floors me when people say they want to use their privilege and not get rid of it. And equity won't happen unless people are uncomfortable enough to say, you know what, I'm holding a certain amount of privilege and I'm going to do more than use it. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to make sure or do my part in creating equity. So, and don't be patronizing, right? The thing is, like, this is about long-term substance effects that's transformational. This is not our labor. It's not our labor.
And Queen, I would just add to that, that's a big piece right there. When what you're basically saying is people need to be open to sharing the pie.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's a whole nother dynamic. And that's why we're where we are, because people don't want to share the pie because they're afraid they don't want to be us or be people who have been put in situations where they don't have the pie.
Right. Like, yes, absolutely, positively. You know, the work of racism is to keep us so distracted from thriving and from living. You know, Toni Morrison talks about that a lot in her works, about creating a world where her world is actually centered. And can you imagine a world created where people of affluence, people who are not of European descent, right, are not centered? Like, what is the comfortability with that? Because again, too, it's about privilege. And as long as you're trying, you know, as long as you have to be, what did she say? As long as you have to be tall while I'm on my knees and there's a problem, like, how is equity showing up? And it's an internal process. It's emotional labor that's just not ours.
So here's a really interesting question, and maybe Lois might want to jump on this. I don't know, or everybody can. But it says some white people will say that they're colorblind when they think about race. Is it good? Is it good that they are not categorizing people because of their race, or is it bad that they may not be appreciating the important aspects of someone's life journey?
So for somebody to say that they don't see color and they see me, that's insulting.
Yes.
I'm a Black woman.
Yes.
You know, acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Acknowledge who I am. And don't say that it doesn't matter because I don't see color. You see color. That's my difference. That's who I identify as, a Black woman. B-L-A-C-K capital B.
Mother.
Yeah.
That to me is putting a like a bull with a red flag. Don't say that to me. It's insulting.
And Lois, just to add to that, when you say it's insulting, I think a lot of people might not understand that, because I feel the same way when people say they don't see color. I feel like you're saying I'm invisible.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
So please don't say that, because when a lot of times when people say that, they think that they're doing you a service.
Yes.
They think that they're being kind. You know, they think that means that I'm not racist, but that to me says a whole nother thing, because that means that you're minimizing my reality.
Right.
That's right.
Absolutely. Imagine the privilege to be able to walk around and you don't have to consider your ethnicity.
Right.
You know, that when we talk about, you know, a certain type of supremacy existing, I always go to like pantyhose and what color is considered nude.
Right.
Right? Like, so, you know, to say that you don't see color and this whole world operates in color, that it is necessary in order for certain systems to thrive.
Here he comes.
And doing it on our back.
Okay.
Don't say it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
So.
Okay. So Sal's giving me the message here, and I got a bunch more questions. I don't know. Okay. What if we could quickly respond to these? And I think we can go quick, maybe. What do you do to affirm yourselves, particularly given the rich history of Blacks in America, to triumph over the tragedy and all the different obstacles? So how do you personally affirm yourself to stay resilient and to keep it moving? What's your strength?
Recognizing that my spirituality and sexuality are two sides of the same coin, and how the reclamation and decolonizing healing and what that means, and going back to reclaim all the things that I was told was evil and dark, and staying centered in that. You know, I came to a place a few years ago when I decided not to center those who had issues with me, but to center my joy. And what I found is from that relationship, it is something that ancestrally and generationally we've always done, has been able to center our joy. And like, that's how I do it.
Anybody else?
I was just going to say simply acknowledging and accepting everything that I have to offer this world, and knowing that it is good.
So mine is when God created everything, he looked back and said it was good. And so when God created me, he looked back and said it was good. And so everything about me is validated in God, not about others around me. And so that's how I affirm and walk in my greatness each and every day and show up in the world.
I just I think I have a lot, well, hopefully a lot of time to do a bunch of stuff that I'm able to do. And thinking even though we've gone back a lot, we've inched forward to where at least I can go to the store and not have to worry about, oh, am I in the wrong place in the store and stuff.
Lois?
I can't add anything too much more. I think that everything everyone has said is really important, and at going to the end stage of my life, I think I have a lot to offer still, and I value who I am. I value these young people who are so amazing, this panel. I value you, I love you, and I honor you because you are what we call the future. And Corinne, you stay true to who you are because you are the future.
Thank you, Lois. So bottom line, what do we want to leave the people with? Courageous conversations. How do we sum it up? Because then Ms. Corinne is going to give our closing. Any last words for the folks?
Well, I think there are dialogues that are happening now in Delaware. Certainly the dialogue for action that goes on, and I understand about the 21-day dialogue. There's so much going on in terms of talking. We have to talk, and talk sometimes can be cheap. We have to listen.
Mm-hmm.
We have to listen. Talking, we can talk. But if you don't listen, if you don't take it in and you don't understand and make an effort, if you don't understand and say, I don't understand, help me to understand what you're saying so that I can know better and I can do better. Because without the dialogue, there is no hope.
And I would just say, to me, it's just small steps. You don't have to do anything grand, but just make the effort to be open to have those conversations. Don't take everything so personal. No one is trying to beat you up. Be open to conversations if you really care and want to make the difference. And realize be open and honest. I think as Jay said earlier, be open and true to your challenges and see what you need to do individually to make small changes. If everybody makes small changes, I think they come up to a bigger change.
Absolutely.
See everybody as an individual first before the groups that you want to place them in. See them as an individual, and don't continue to let fear keep you stuck. Allow that fear to be your fuel to move towards real change. Sometimes you just have to do it afraid. And so your friends might talk about you, but if you really want to see change and you want to see things be different and to be better, then allow the fear to turn into your fuel that says, I'm going to step out of my comfort zone so that I can see progression.
Absolutely. And to that point, if you ask, and someone we are offering our emotional labor today, right? And understand that if you ask somebody for their emotional labor, they're not required to give it to you. As we've talked about throughout this panel, there are centuries and decades worth of conversation that you can go and Google. And YouTube University is always there as well, right? to be able to do your own research. Emotional labor requires emotional intelligence, your ability to recognize, identify, and process your emotions without burdening other folks. And I think that's an important part of this too. Don't be such in a rush to build community that you actually harming the community you're trying to support, because we're already here.
Well, so how's everybody feeling now? We started off with some positive words. Are we hopeful? Are we hopeful?
So I actually am thankful, but I also want to say this. I want to honor both you, we're gonna call you Mama Gail, and Mama Lois, because you are the generation ahead of us, and you have been through some stuff that maybe we have not been through. So we just thank you for your wisdom, and thank you for your determination and your steadfastness and perseverance, because it is greatly appreciated. And I, for one, feel blessed to have been connected to you today.
Yes. Thank you. And I think in spite of all these different things, there's hope, but people need to all do their small pieces. So I really am grateful for being here, and I thank you guys, because I think we did pretty okay.
You did.
I think we did pretty darn good. So now I think I'm done, and I think it's up to Ms. Corinne to give us our closing remarks. As Jason takes a little libation for his throat. So I think that's it. Nothing else? Last words? I think we got 5 minutes. Sal's been pushing me on the time. So Corinne?
So I will say to all our people of color, if there are any people of color here that are like cis heterosexual here, try to go to your people in your family that maybe aren't that maybe don't agree with the LGBTQ community, and try your best to get them to understand, because if we can't accept our own people, then how are we going to be accepted? And then I'll say to the LGBTQ community, the full LGBTQ community, we need to be less segregated. We need to like be more united with people of color and Caucasian people coming together and actually being a community, a whole family. And then my last thing is just to everybody, please just go try your best if you can. Go to protest, sign petitions, talk to legislators. Do the most you can to change the world if you can, because without doing that, you've just been a bystander. And I'll say that we have so many generations in this room that I feel like we can do this.
Thank you.
And that is all I have.
Thank you, Corinne, and thank you, everybody. Thank you for all the folks that signed up to be a part of this. I think it was pretty awesome, and thanks. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.